Okay.
Welcome back to a new zone. Today we're going to be covering the 2024 Texas Longhorns as we continue along with our 2024 college football preview series. As always, before we get started, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. We're going to continue doing these previews until the game or the season kicks underway. And when the season kicks underway, we go live every single Sunday, so make sure you stick around for those. But Dad, let's get right into it. Let's talk about last season's Texas Longhorns team. I had them going 9-3 or 10-2. This is another prediction we did before we started doing game-by-game breakdowns. You had them 10-2. We were both very vocal with saying they're not going to make the playoffs. You had them winning the Big 12. I had Oklahoma winning the Big 12 last year, so I was wrong there. But they obviously did make the playoffs, lost by 6 to Washington in a really good game. What do you take away from the Texas Longhorns last season?
Yeah, first, a very good defense, but also a very good offense. I think you saw the maturation of Quinn Ewers as a star quarterback, obviously now on the cover of College Football 25. Jonathan Brooks really broke out as a running back over 1,000 yards. And then Xavier Worthy, we all know what he did at the Combine. But before the Combine, we're talking about 75 catches, over 1,000 yards receiving. So this offense, defense, really both kind of meshed. Sark did a heck of a job. They were able to navigate a pretty good Big 12. And remember last year, this is when Texas and Oklahoma were still there, and able to navigate a early loss to Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Played a very good game against Washington in the playoffs. That game went down literally to the very last play. So they have stake and claim in saying, hey, we were right there. And then obviously we'll talk about what they look like this year. So I think, I was a little bit off in terms of their projection, but I feel very confident about the direction this team is going in. What's your thoughts?
So I'm just fact checking myself with something before I say it, and then I sound stupid. But obviously the only 2 losses that Texas had this year were by single digits.
Yes.
And that says the same as far as all 5 losses in 2022. So the last 2 years they have never lost a game by more than a touchdown, which I think is a big deal under Sark. Obviously, he's had a top recruiting class now, one of the best portal classes this year. I think Texas, again, I was spot on last year with Michigan, saying that I thought Michigan was the best team in the country. I'm now saying that about the Longhorns. I think Texas is the most put together, most balanced, and best team in college football heading into week 1 in the summer right now. Now, could that change throughout injuries and stuff like that? Of course. Excuse me. But I think this is the best team coming back. I think what they bring in kind of makes up for what they lost. I think Texas, as I was making this PowerPoint, I think this is one of the best portal classes that was really slept on. And I think they're going to be able to replace the production that they lost, especially at the skill positions. I mean, obviously losing to Oklahoma last year by 4 and then losing to Washington in the playoffs. The 12-team playoffs, I think Texas is a lock to get in, even with being in the SEC. I don't anticipate them losing many games this year. I think, like I said, this is one of the best teams in college football. So I anticipate them probably having a 3rd year in a row not losing by double digits in any of their games. I think that's a very intriguing stat. Yeah. Like I said, the last 7 losses of the last 2 years have all come by at least a touchdown or less, which is pretty shocking to me. As we look at their roster makeup, obviously you lose Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL last year. He was gone late in the year. You lose both your defensive tackles to the draft. Jatavian Sanders, one of the best tight ends in college football, an offensive lineman, DB to the portal, Jalen Ford to the draft as well. But you bring back arguably a top 3 quarterback. And I know I have listed Arch Manning on there as well, and I think he's a key returner, even though he didn't play last year because he's such a big name. He didn't transfer. So I think that's big that he didn't transfer after Quinn came back. So I think that's a key returning piece for the Longhorns. C.J. Baxter was the second back last year. He comes back to take the lead role as running back position. Anthony Hill Jr. I think he was the 2nd or 3rd leading tackler on this team. And then Barron Sorrell, I think he was the 2nd or 3rd leading sack person on this team. So I think that's big. Obviously, transfer portal additions are massive. Isaiah Bond, we saw what he did against Auburn. We saw Silas Bolden with DJU at Oregon State. Matthew Golden comes over from Houston. Makuba comes from Clemson. He was the highest rated safety after Caleb Downs in the portal. Then Trey Moore coming from UTSA, and then Amari Niblack. I think this is a really good class. Then obviously a top 10 recruiting class as well with Ryan Ringo and Colin Simmons. This team has a chance, I think, to kind of silence the critics of the Texas isn't back notion. I think they're in the playoffs for sure. And like I said, I think I personally think they have a better chance at winning the national championship than Georgia does. And again, that might be a hot take, but I trust what Texas has more. Again, I was a Texas hater last year. I did not believe in Texas. They proved me wrong when they beat Alabama on the road in Bryant-Denny, and then they went on to win the Big 12 and take Washington in that high-powered offense down to the very last play. So I think this team, what they have bringing back, is the deepest in college football, and we'll see that real soon when the SEC play kicks off for them.
Yeah, so to highlight some of your points, obviously Quinn Ewers at about 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, getting him back is a big deal. I talked about Jonathan Brooks, and Jonathan Brooks is a heck of a running back, over 1,000 yards. But what they bring back in Baxter and Blue was over 1,000 yards rushing, and Baxter really, as you kind of mentioned, stepped up to the cause when Jonathan Brooks went out. They do lose their top 5 pass catchers from last year, which is a little bit concerning when we talk about Worthy, Mitchell, Sanders, Weatherington, and Jonathan Brooks. But they bring over the number 2 and number 3 pass catcher in terms of yards from Alabama, and Isaiah Bond and Amari Niblack. So that is number 2 and number 3 from Alabama last year. And then obviously we assume some people are going to step up. So I think you're very right. I think all of the players that they lost, and they lost some very good talent, they've replaced. Bolden was a big time receiver at Oregon State. I think he was the number 1 receiver at Oregon State last year. Trey Moore from UTSA was a 14 sack guy. Again, not the SEC, but I'm assuming if you can get 14 sacks in college football, you're probably a good defensive lineman, and you're going to cause some disruption along that line. I think getting Makuba is a big deal, because I think the one question you would probably have with this team is the secondary. We know that Makuba kind of fell out of favor at Clemson, but what he does bring is a lot of experience, and obviously he's a high-level talent. So for a secondary that did lose some players, some names, Makuba can kind of settle that. And like I said, they're really, for me, their only question mark. Beyond that, it's just Quinn Ewers getting in sync with these offensive talents that they bring over. I always get a little hesitant when we're talking about a lot of talent coming in the transfer portal, especially in terms of chemistry. I think the talent's there. We saw it with Isaiah Bond last year. I think he's almost an Xavier Worthy clone in terms of a guy who can take the top off. I think Niblack's going to be the number 1 tight end, and it's not like they're without, because they got Gunnar Helm as well. So if they go 2 tight end sets, they're going to be very good. So I think they've replaced all the talent that they lost. My only concern is the chemistry, because a lot of these receivers that they're going to be getting are going to be transfer portal receivers. In fact, I think just about their entire receiving core, except for maybe Giante Cook, who may get a start, are going to be guys that were not there last year. That's my only concern. I think the talent is there, like you said. This may be, now listen, I'm an Ohio State fan, so obviously I believe Ohio State is the most talented team returning in college football, but these two teams are probably neck and neck. You probably throw an Oregon in there, and again, no knock to Georgia. They have a lot of talent as well, but Texas is definitely in that conversation for national championship contender.
Okay, I normally give my prediction first. I want you to give your prediction first today, though, as far as Texas and the record.
Oh, I'm actually shocked. Okay. So if you guys watched the Georgia video, you've seen that I had Georgia beating Texas. I like how this schedule kind of lays out for Texas. Yes, you have a very tough game against Georgia, but that game is not at Georgia. So again, yes, I do have Georgia winning that game, but you avoid Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, some of the other big names in the SEC.
Tennessee.
Tennessee. I think this plays out very favorable for Texas, especially in terms of coming to the SEC. I think Michigan's going to be a little down next year. No knock to Michigan, but we all know they lost a lot. So yes, that game's at Michigan, but I think Texas can overwhelm them with the amount of talent they have, especially early, as Michigan is getting used to so many different things, to include a new head coach, a new starting quarterback, a new start, and again, the list goes on. So I think if that game was a little bit later, I'd have a little bit more concern. But as Michigan is still trying to get into sync with so much change. I feel comfortable with Texas in that game. Like I said, the Oklahoma game is always going to be close, a rivalry. The Georgia game is going to be tough, but the rest of the schedule kind of lays out pretty good for Texas.
So you have them going 11-1. I have them going 11-1 as well. I do want to note the reason why I have Texas beating Oklahoma this year. I do think they're a better team, but Texas is coming off of a bye week. So I think that's going to play a big part. Obviously, losing the game last year, I think they're going to have a fire under them. No Dylan Gabriel this time around, so I think that they're going to take a hit there. So I do think Texas win that game. Obviously, you guys see where I have the loss coming. I have them losing to the Aggies on the road at the end of the year. I just think Texas A&M, the home field advantage, and again, I know a lot of people don't pay too much mind at the home field advantage. I think it's a very big deal, especially when you're at a place like Texas A&M. Last game of the season, rivalry game. It's really a Texas matchup. This could make or break the SEC. And when I say that, I don't mean I don't have A&M as a top 5 team in the SEC, but I have Texas as a top 2 team in the SEC. So if Texas A&M is 8-3 at that point, or 7-4, and Texas is undefeated, and Texas A&M can play spoiler and knock them off, or even if Texas at that point, into your prediction, let's say Texas is 10-1, and Texas A&M can play spoiler against a team like Texas and knock them out of the SEC title game. I think that crowd is going to be rocking. Kyle Field is one of the hardest environments to play in. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is a top 3 quarterback. I'm not knocking that. I think they're a far better team than A&M is. Obviously, Mike Elko's first-year head coach in the SEC, transferring over from Duke, or moving over from Duke. So I do think he has his work cut out in the SEC. But there's just something about playing at an LSU, at a Texas A&M, at a school like that where you are in front of 100,000 fans. And again, it's a pressure moment. If it was week 2, week 3, it might not mean that much, but it's the final game of the year. Depending on the scenario, I think this can be a trap game for them. Just like I think the Georgia, obviously, game, the Oklahoma game, the Michigan game.
And I'll be honest, as you kind of look now, to your credit, as you kind of look at their schedule, that's probably their first game like that on the road. Now, Arkansas, again, no knock to the Arkansas fan base, but they don't go to Bryant-Denny. They don't go to Death Valley. That is going to be now. I know they have played Texas A&M in the past, but this regime is not. And I think the crowds in the SEC are different than Big 12 crowds. This is going to be their first time really in that loud, crazy environment in the SEC when you look at the schedule. Yes, last game of the season, but that's their first big game on the road.
Yeah, and again, before Texas fans start, grilling and bashing, I already said I don't have any SEC teams undefeated. I still think Texas wins the SEC. I think they are going to win it. I don't have Georgia winning. I think it's going to be Texas and Ole Miss in the SEC title game. That's what my early prediction is, and I have Texas winning it. And I think Texas will either be the 1 or the 2 seed getting into the playoffs. So again, I think this is a really good team. In my opinion, the best team in college football coming back. Ohio State is a very close second to me. Oregon is, second or third. So those are the top 3 in my opinion. Georgia to follow. But I think this team's going to be really good. I mean, let us know in the comment section what you guys think. What do you guys think the Longhorns are going to produce this year record-wise? What is their floor? What is their ceiling? And as always, if you haven't already, if you stuck around this long in the video, please do us a favor, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We are 3 days away from the college football video game coming out. We're going to have one more video coming out before that. We may do some sort of content on the channel regarding it. So keep an eye on that as well. But we will see you guys in the next preview. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.